Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's What's Up Wednesday. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Riehl, who's the president and CEO of Colorado Epic. She's going to be going over the new passed legislation that will directly support ECE owners, teachers, families, etc. So, hi, Nicole. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, thanks, Melina. Appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. So kick us off today just by explaining kind of what Colorado Epic is for those who don't know and a little bit of your background in that ECE industry.
Yeah, well, EPIC, of course, is an acronym because we love acronyms in early childhood.
Always, yeah.
Executives partnering to invest in children. And EPIC was founded about 13 years ago by a group of business leaders and nonprofit and philanthropic leaders, including David Mirage, who also helped found Early Learning Ventures, to really make sure that there was an organization that could serve as the business community's voice in support of early childhood investments and initiatives and policy. And so we really work on enhancing the infrastructure and implementing policy solutions that are, of course, focused on early childhood with really a twofold mission of making sure that we are attracting and retaining a great workforce today, but we're also doing our very best to build and develop a great workforce for tomorrow. So that's why EPIC exists. And we have a membership of over 55 business leaders and executives here in Colorado who support our mission and advocate for early childhood in a variety of ways. So our work, of course, includes really bipartisan work at our state capitol, focused on policy around early childhood. And then we also work directly with a lot of different business groups across Colorado, chambers of commerce, economic development corporations, to educate business leaders on why early childhood is so important to our economy, to our larger workforce, to making sure that children and families are supported and we have a really great, strong economy and state, and that ultimately it's a great place to work, live, and raise a family regardless of where families are. And then we also work directly oftentimes with employers and community partners and helping them actually implement benefits and childcare solutions. So we do not operate childcare, but we do help employers and partners like that build and develop it and think about how they're going to find really great partners to work with on the operations side and plan for the long-term investment in childcare with their own workforce or with their own community as well.
Wow. Yeah, you guys really do it all. That's awesome. Thanks for that overview.
It's really fun.
And then what's your background in the ECE industry? You can kind of share that with our network watch today too.
Yeah, so I started as an early childhood teacher in the classroom. It was actually for an on-site employer-based childcare program at Storage Tech up in Louisville, Colorado.
Wow, okay.
So I was in the classroom for a number of years and know how it is to be, working with infants, toddlers, preschoolers in the classroom every day. It's an important and a very exhausting job as well. And, I loved my time working with the kiddos in the classroom. I also handled a lot of the scheduling and classroom coverage. And so I also know what it's like to get those 5 a.m. text messages around, hey, I'm sick today, and running around to figure out, which of your floaters can cover which classroom and covering lunch breaks and all of that too. So after I worked as an early childhood teacher, I had gotten my business degree and I was anxious to really try something new. I went into the private sector for a while and actually worked in the home building industry for a number of years and ultimately ended up getting pulled back into early childhood. I just missed I missed having the impact on children and families. And so a friend of mine, when the Denver preschool program was passed back in 2007, called me up and said, hey, we're implementing this new program in Denver and think you'd be a great partner to work with. So that ultimately brought me back into early childhood. And I worked with the Denver preschool program and Qualistar for a number of years, moved on to Denver's Early Childhood Council and supported providers directly through their quality improvement grants and initiatives. And then in 2019, joined EPIC as their new president and CEO, which ultimately for me was kind of a dream of combining business and early childhood together. So it's been a really fun journey.
Yeah, that's truly the whole package from where you kind of had your background into now. That's incredible. That's awesome. Super
Thanks.
Cool. All right. So we'll get into it. Kind of break it down. What are these new legislative items that ECE individuals should be aware of right now?
Yeah, so Colorado has been hard at work passing some really incredible legislation and policies for children and families. So of course, I think most people have heard about universal preschool now.
Hmm.
That's been a really big effort that's been in the works for a number of years. It really started out with Proposition EE, which was on the ballot for voters in November of 2020, and increased tobacco product taxes and also created a new tax for liquid vaping products here in Colorado. And the vast majority of that funding is now going towards funding universal preschool, which basically means that every child in Colorado gets at least 10 hours a week of free preschool. And some children and families, maybe a child has a identified disability, needs some special intervention services, or that family may have a lower household income. They may be then entitled to more hours of preschool each week, depending on some of those factors. So the bigger part of that, once the voters had said overwhelmingly yes to Proposition EE, the hard work of then actually designing the universal preschool program, figuring out what that looks like, and how to serve providers and families well in that effort was really the task at hand. And so then over the next couple of years, part of what really unfolded was, I think, a really comprehensive process of the Early Childhood Leadership Commission and the state of Colorado and the Office of Early Childhood listening really intently to providers and families about what was working and what wasn't working. And what they heard overwhelmingly was that the system is too complicated. It is too difficult to navigate. Providers are spending far too much time administratively trying to figure out different funding streams, different requirements, different rules. It was just not user-friendly in any way,
Sure.
shape, or form. And families oftentimes were saying the same thing. They were navigating different departments, different applications, different types of funding. Again, very complex. So ultimately, I think what was really happening is it worked well at the top when all of the funding was kind of being managed, right? But it didn't work well for the end customers or the end users, the providers and the families. So part of that effort really then led to this idea of a new Department of Early Childhood in Colorado, where these funding streams that were currently sitting in 3 and 4 different departments across the state of Colorado could then be brought together into one department. It also then brought this idea forward of one single application that parents could use to apply for universal preschool. And then in the long term, use that same application to apply for other types of funding streams that they might be eligible for. And then I think lastly, and most importantly, thinking about how we have kind of a local coordinating model to support providers across the state of Colorado, and also a way for them to have more streamlined reporting and payment processes for universal preschool and other funding streams. So, the biggest bill I think that passed this past session was House Bill 22-1295, and that was the Universal Preschool and New Early Childhood Department bill. It was almost 500 pages long in terms of its legislative length. So a massive effort in terms of thinking about how we reorganize programs, funding streams, ways that we engage with parents, and of course, ways that we support providers who are actually serving our children and families across the state of Colorado. So that was really exciting. And I think, a really landmark bill and monumental effort that most states really, in fact, I think all states haven't really been able to take on at once.
Right. No, that's incredible. Yeah, there's so much going on, and it's hard to educate everyone on what is going on if they're not kind of in that day-to-day like everyone else kind of in the industry. So that's incredible. So for anyone that kind of has questions or wants to follow up or learn more, kind of where can they go or who can they contact if needed on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's still so much happening with universal preschool. So now they're starting to go into the rulemaking phase.
Right.
They're developing an advisory group that will advise the executive director in the new department on these rules for universal preschool. It's really important for providers to get involved in this process because their voice is incredibly important in how this program is shaped and what those rules and standards look like. So I encourage everyone to visit the new Colorado Department of Early Childhood website. It's Cdec.colorado.gov. And you can learn more there about universal preschool. You can click on ways to get involved. You can provide feedback through their website. Please definitely continue to share your thoughts and opinions and get involved in this process, because it's still continuing and moving forward. And now is where you might say the rubber really hits the road as they think about what those program requirements and standards look like.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we've kind of really only scratched the surface of what's going on, but it's nice to have you on and just kind of share the information that is current and relevant right now to those individuals, and then provide the resource of where to go with questions. So we'll kind of wrap up here, but feel free to share any final thoughts, updates regarding Colorado Epic, or just kind of in general for the industry watching today.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on. That website I mentioned is a great place to go. There's also, so much activity and really funding support happening that's coming from the stimulus grants that came in. So people can also visit the coecstimulus.com website, and that has all of the information on the different programs and grants and investments that are being made with that federal stimulus money into early childhood. And I think, for the industry as a whole, workforce, we know, is just still a huge focus and a huge area of need. We know that programs are really, really struggling to keep classrooms open, find the staff that they need. And so, there was a really important bill passed this year. It was House Bill 22-1010, and that is a brand new early childhood educator tax credit program that will allow for a refundable tax credit for early childhood teaching professionals for up to $1,500 a year for each tax year. So also a really important bill, and I think effort to keep your eye on as we think about how important our workforce for early childhood is here in Colorado, and make sure that we're attracting and retaining those people. And if anyone wants to know more about Epic, you can check out our website at coloradoepic.org. We've got our members on there and lots of different information on all of our initiatives. You can join our newsletter if you'd like to keep up to date, informed on what we're up to and what we're working on as well.
Awesome. And I'll include the links to every link that Nicole mentioned, either in the description or the comments of whatever platform you're watching on. So I'll be sure all the information's kind of out there and easily clickable for you all. But that's about it. Thank you so much, Nicole. We appreciate your time, and we'll see everyone next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Absolutely.